Hello and welcome to Look Both Ways with David and Wes, pragmatic conversations about all things transportation. My name is David Zipper. I am a senior fellow at the MIT Mobility Initiative and a contributing writer at Bloomberg and Vox. Wes, who are you?
I am Wes Marshall, a professor of civil engineering at University of Colorado, Denver, author of the book Killed by a Traffic Engineer, and amongst some other things. But yeah,
Well, fair enough. And it's great to be with you once again, Wes, as usual. You can tell from that sort of like it always looks kind of gray, but I don't think it actually is. The backdrop of Denver behind you.
today is one of the few days we get 310 days of sunshine a year, but today is one of the days that's a little bit grayer than most.
Oh, it's not. I thought it was some sort of cover on your window. That really
Uh,
is gray.
there is a cover on my window, but today it is a little sunny now. But this morning when I biked in, it was not, which is rare. I was just talking to somebody about it. I'd have a hard time moving someplace now that isn't that sunny because I'm so
Yeah.
used to it.
I've heard friends from Colorado say that. It's like it's weird how you get addicted to sunshine there. Some get addicted to sunrises or sunsets or the coast or whatever, but in Colorado,
Yeah.
apparently people love the sunshine.
No, we definitely missed the beach, but one of the big surprises in coming out here was honestly how good the weather was. I thought it would be pretty much the same as Boston. It is not. Like we have no humidity. When it's 90 degrees in the summer, it feels like 75, and in the winter when you think it'd be icy, like it doesn't really ice over, it just melts. So on both ends of the spectrum, it kind of pulls you towards the middle because it's so sunny, you get warmer in the winter, and no humidity, get cooler in the summer. So it's much better than I thought. I was shocked by that.
Well, that's great because I can tell you I've never met anyone who moved to Washington, D.C. and said the weather is much better than I expected. I've yet to meet a single soul in my 15, 16 years here who said that. But we always like to begin our episodes of Look Both Ways with a little bit of a personal question related to transportation. So I have one for you, Wes,
Sure.
because you grew up in outside of Boston, right?
Yeah. So
Um,
Watertown, it's just the next town that sort of touches Boston on the west side there.
Watertown. Yeah. Were you excited to get your driver's license?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm an American kid. It's still a rite of passage for most people, and yeah, no, it still was a big deal. And also, I was a little bit older than a lot of my friends, so I was the first one to get it. So it was bigger. Like maybe if I was the youngest one, it might have been different. But being the
Just hung
oldest
out with
of
people like 2 grades behind you a lot or something?
no, I just like my birthday was December, so it was like right before a lot of my friends, like my other two good friends, they weren't till February. So, yeah, it's just a couple months back then when you're 16 and a half, when you're getting those licenses, like 2 months is a long time.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
yeah, no, it was felt like a big deal to go through that.
And you got it, like, as soon as you were able to?
As soon as the DMV would give me a appointment, yeah. I mean, I think it took me like an extra month just because they were so backed up with bookings. But yeah, as soon as I was able to, I did all that.
That's funny. What year was that? Not to date you, but
Early 90s.
fairly put, but, yeah, so you are to be clear, and make sure everyone knows this, you are older than me, but not by that much. But
Yeah, I honestly, I don't think we've talked about how old we are, but I think I'm a little bit older than you. So
yeah, not that much, but it's funny because I grew up in North Carolina where,
yeah.
we don't have the transit and it's not as dense as Boston, of course. But I actually waited like 6 months to get my license. And I was sort of like antsy about getting it. I was not chomping at the bit the way you were. Maybe because I just already knew even then I didn't really like cars that much.
Um, I don't know what it was. I mean, I think there is like that freedom you sort of think is going to happen.
Yeah.
And also I went to a high school in sort of the next town over, and that's one that you had to drive to. So I got a ride from one of my good friend's fathers for years, and then all of a sudden
Okay.
I could drive myself to there. Like I bought a car myself prior to getting a license. I think I paid $800 for that car.
What car was it? You got to tell us.
It's a 1983 Chrysler LeBaron.
Nice.
Three windows were
Nice.
electric, one was roll. Um, that door was a different color, and like whenever we stopped at a red light, the car would start smoking. So we joked that was like the genie in the in my car. That was guiding us around. So yeah, my car insurance for a 16-year-old male, car insurance is crazy expensive. My car insurance was 3 times more per year than the actual car, which
Mm.
my best friend's father was my insurance agent. I used to like you scoundrel, like you're taking all my money because the pizza place I worked at, I had a hard time paying for all that stuff, and cars are expensive.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And insurance prices have gone way up the last few years too. So
Yeah,
I don't even know how the high schoolers today are affording it. Fair enough. Shall we jump in with word on the street?
let's do it.
All right. So the newsy topic to be discussed in today's episode is Trump and really Sean Duffy, the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, threatening to pull transit funding. This is a very sort of like confusing topic because there have been a couple different excuses that Duffy has given for doing this, and the excuses keep changing. But first, he in the wake of this horrible murder that took place in Charlotte, where a young woman was stabbed to death on the transit system in Charlotte. Duffy has used safety as a excuse for pulling federal funding or threatening to pull federal funding from the transit systems in Charlotte as well as Chicago and Boston. And I looked into this a little bit for the transit wonks out there. He's talking about urbanized area formula grants known as 5307. This would be basically capital dollars for transit. It's a chunk of their capital dollars. It's not all of it. It's not operating dollars because, as probably a lot of our listeners know, the federal government contributes nothing toward transit operating dollars. So that is sort of playing itself out, this like crime reason for pulling money. But then, amidst all of this shutdown chaos, um, the Trump administration announced that it was pulling $18 billion from New York for the Second Avenue subway and the Gateway project, which is a ton of money, obviously. And the excuse there isn't safety, or the justification, I should say, is it's DEI, which Duffy says is discriminatory, unconstitutional contracting processes that are used in New York. Similar threats were then made to Chicago around around DEI rules that violate the law, which is very weird because this was just a executive order from Trump. There are no federal rules that I can see anywhere at FTA, Federal Transit Administration, around DEI. So this is obviously going to be litigated. Um, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but why don't I pause and hear what you think, Wes?
Well, when you first brought this up as a topic, like, I mean, obviously you mentioned some of the high profile crimes that have been taking place. And it just made me curious whether, I mean, how safe it is. I mean, not just safety in terms of like if a crash happens, but safety as a passenger.
Right.
So, like we had mentioned at one point when we talked, like that data is not that easy to find. Like there is a national transit database where that has crime data. So I pulled the stuff from various sources, and like the data essentially shows that crime seems to be trending downward. Like New York City subway
Yeah.
hit a historic low. I think 0.6 major crimes per 1 million rides. It's like a 30% drop over the last few years. Like DC Metro had sharp decline. Same with BART. LA was a big drop in violent crimes. I think Chicago was the one city I saw that things were flat and definitely up since pre-COVID. So I don't know. I just was trying to add some context to these numbers. So I ended up doing a little math, some back of the envelope stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
know if you join the podcast, you're not probably looking for a lot of math, but if we assume that New York City rate of the 0.6 crimes per million rides, like if you assume you're going to ride the transit, let's say every weekday back and forth, so like
Mm-hmm.
500 rides per year,
Mm-hmm.
like it ends up giving you like a risk of like 0.0003 incidents per person. So if you ride transit every weekday all year for an hour each day, 250 days a year, like the data suggests you're going to be a victim of like a felony once every 3,300 years,
Hmm.
which is a long time. If you look at driving, the risk is like 0.016. So that's like 50 times riskier than transit. Like
Being a
assuming you're
victim
going
of
to,
a crime if you're driving.
yeah.
Is
So
that
that's
right?
comparing a fatality in a car to just being a victim of a felony. So that's not even you dying necessarily. That's just being a victim of something like an assault. But if you look at injury crashes driving, it's like 2,300 times more dangerous than
Yeah.
driving. And actually, this actually got me thinking about Halloween, because Halloween's coming up. It's like the one night of a year where, kids, it's the most likely time kids are going to be hurt. And there's data on like the emergency room numbers, on injuries on Halloween. Like basically, you're about, I think, 3 times more likely to be hurt on that one night. If you go trick or treating,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
the injuries just on that one night are 3 times higher than if you do a year of transit.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, so I think so to be clear, I think that the 2 if I understand what you're saying, and this aligns with what I've read as well, the pretty much across the country, crime rates are going down on transit. They
Like
have
the
been for the
only
last
the only one
couple
I found
years.
going up is assaults on drivers. Like
Yeah,
that is the one category that
assaults on transit drivers. Is that what you
on
mean?
especially, yeah, bus drivers. So
Operators. Yeah, 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 okay.
on operators. So that is something that has been going up since COVID.
Well, that's it. Well, I hardly think that's what Duffy and Trump are referring to.
Oh no,
They're
no, they're not
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about that at all. Like
yeah.
it's a smoke show. But I mean,
Well, we'll get to that in a second, but yeah, so the crime argument is BS, and then, of course, what, Trump and Duffy are not talking about at all, and I don't think people even really appreciate is, just when we're talking about safety, it's not just crime, it's also just the likelihood of being hurt or killed in a crash,
yeah,
and I often say, like, if you really wanna be safe, don't get inside a big SUV, get inside a bus, because that thing is way bigger, it's gonna be moving at the speed limit, driven by a professional, and if you're hit, you're probably going to be just fine. And there's data that that Ian Savage, who's an economist at Northwestern, has done looking at basically like death risks per million passenger miles, and the bus and train are orders of magnitude
oh yeah.
safer than driving a car or being inside a car, which people don't even think about. Like, there's have you seen that? That's sort of one of these like interesting like freakonomicsy findings that after 9/11, people were so freaked out about flying that a lot of people drove instead of flying. And because driving is so much more dangerous per mile than flying, that it led to like a spike in overall fatalities just from the induced number of people on the road. Did you see like supposedly it was like a comparable number of deaths to the fatalities on 9/11? Don't quote me on that, but it was an interesting analysis that actually makes intuitive sense to me.
Yeah, I remember that as well, and it makes perfect sense.
It does. But I don't know. I feel like I mean, taking a step back here, Duffy and Trump are using DI as a reason to go after transit funding. They're using safety as a reason to go after transit funding. I mean, let's be real. This is a way of bashing or hurting blue cities. That's I think I've it's hard for me to take seriously anything that Duffy is saying, not only because he doesn't know anything about transit. I mean, he's a reality TV star for God's sake, but it seems pretty
Well,
clear he's searching for some way or excuse to have to be able to take away dollars from cities where people and their leaders don't like Trump.
I mean, to be fair, I think that just because you're a reality TV star doesn't mean you can't know stuff about transit. It is possible that he.
Do you have a friend who's a reality TV star who
No,
really loves the train or something?
I
I feel like
don't.
I
But
touched a nerve. I'm sorry.
oh no, no,
I
I
take it back.
just
I'm sorry. I
thought
take
it
it
was
back.
funny. Actually, my wife loves that show where the kids with autism are finding love, and that one girl from Boston loves the tea. Like she knows everything about every um, MBTA car. Like she is. I remember watching one episode where, and this girl just was super transit focused. She like ended up starting a club and finding other friends that are super into
I
transit as well.
mean, that sounds heartwarming. Let's be real. Sean Duffy was on what, like Road Rules? I feel like that's a little bit different.
Yeah, he was on one of the MTV. He was actually in Boston too. Like that was back when I watched reality TV, like for like a year in there, and that was when um, the Real World was in Boston. And I think they did originally did San Francisco. Like Boston was maybe year 2 or year 3, but they were like living in a firehouse not far from where I grew up, and you know, chaos ensues when you put those kids together.
That must have been exciting for you.
No, I'm off that stoop. I don't watch reality TV anymore, and I joke my wife and I have kind of gotten a TV divorce, so she watches like whole one set of things, and I watch a totally separate set of things.
Yeah, that's as long as it works for you,
Yeah,
it's all good. No, but just to reel it back, no, so I spoke at or moderated a panel at the annual meeting of APTA, which is the National
yeah,
Transit Association, in Boston last month, and the keynote speaker there, or the major speaker, was Mark Molinaro, who is the head of the Federal Transit Administration, and he said in his remarks, like I'm paraphrasing, but he said, two words I don't want to hear at all from anybody are fiscal cliff. It was all about safety. It was all about security, and he basically was sort of like bashing the transit community in his remarks. And what somebody said afterwards, though, was like, it's funny though, because it's what I heard afterwards from a bunch of people is like basically he knows his audience isn't the transit community. Molinaro is actually like weirdly kind of liked by people at the APTA conference, at least weird to me because what he says is pretty bad publicly. But he apparently is just sort of saying things to placate the MAGA world.
yeah.
And MAGA wants to talk about Irina Zarutska's murder in Charlotte and talk about rampant crime in big cities and on transit. So Molinaro is doing it. And then maybe behind the scenes, he's trying to minimize the damage. But the fact of the matter is, transit is so vulnerable right now because they are facing a fiscal cliff. These systems are really like short of money to get through their budgets without having to cut funding or cut service. So these attacks to withhold federal funding is sort of hitting transit at a particularly vulnerable moment. So I worry about that.
I think one of the the big questions that comes up to me is like, whose responsibility is crime on transit? I know every agency has like security, but like if a real crime happens, you call the real police. Like you don't call the transit police. Like
That's such an important point. I think that's actually like the fundamental um, problem with what Duffy and Trump are doing with transit and the narrative there is they're basically implying that transit is responsible for homelessness and crime. And that's absurd. That's not how Europe or Asia or any place else works. If there's a crime committed, the police come. If someone's
right.
homeless, there's social services to take care of them. Transit doesn't have the resources or the capacity or the skills to handle those kinds of societal issues. Transit agencies should be devoted to moving people efficiently, usefully, and helpfully. That's all they should be doing. And I worry that Duffy and Trump, but really Duffy, are sort of cynically misleading people about what transit's purpose is.
So to push the blame onto the agencies, it just doesn't feel fair.
No, it's not. It's not only is it not fair, it puts them in an impossible position. What are they going to? I've transit CEOs have told me that they've had to choose between hiring a security officer or hiring a bus operator. Like there's a direct trade-off between devoting resources towards security and providing high quality transportation service. And that trade-off shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist.
I
Well,
agree.
great. That was such a uplifting topic. We really need to pick like a nice word on the street one of these days, but today is not that day. I do think we have a fun roundabout topic, or you do. So tell us about the Amish and e-bikes.
So this comes from I was listening to the podcast called Articles of Interest, and the episode was about zippers, like literally about
Love
zippers, like
zippers.
on your
My
pants.
best friends are zippers. Sorry.
And
Bad joke.
they go through like a lot of history, but I guess I want to couch this first by saying all Amish orders are not the same. So there are different like sects of the Amish. So some do use zippers, but for the most part, what this podcast was saying is that most of them do not. Like, and the interesting thing she pointed out kind of during the podcast was that a lot of these Amish folk are using e-bikes. Like they don't use cars, but they do use e-bikes. And when it just struck me as how interesting it was that when they're wrestling with a new technology, like they ask themselves, like, how will this affect like our families and our community? And they decide whether or not that
Hmm,
technology is worthwhile. They take that step in between,
hmm,
and something like cars they say no to because it's going to separate families too much. They're less likely to have dinner together and stuff like that. Like with zippers, they're worried about everyone buying new fashion and new clothes and like whatever rabbit holes they go down in terms of like the slippery slope type stuff. But e-bikes, they're like, yeah, this is okay. Like our families can still be together. It just makes things a little bit easier and a little bit better. So I just found it fascinating, like not just that the Amish are using e-bikes, because I mean, going into this, I didn't know a ton about the Amish other than a song and a movie or two, but I don't know. I just found it fascinating, like their process.
hmm. That's interesting. Is it? I assume e-bikes and well, frankly, I'm trying to remember when I've been to Amish country in Pennsylvania. It's been a while now. They do ride bikes quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I think historically they have always ridden bikes.
And
But
they're
yeah,
okay.
you would think that maybe e-bikes would be off the table given
The
what you hear,
technology.
the
Yeah.
technology. Like the woman she interviewed had a flip phone, but she didn't even keep it in her house. She keeps it like in a box outside the house.
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
so like stuff like that, typically technology is thought of as something that would have a negative impact on their community, so they don't use it. But e-bikes is one that they were cool with, and it's become a big part of their lives. So, I just
That's
think it's interesting.
interesting.
Like we have, obviously a lot of new technologies. Like we talked about things like touchscreens in cars. Like we don't even check to see if it's going to be safer or not, let alone think about the effects on the community or with social media or whatever it is. But there's so much in transportation that we just kind of throw out there and see what happens instead of even thinking through what could happen as a baseline.
Yeah, well, they're thinking through what could happen as a baseline just for safety, which is, why why vehicles like the Cybertruck are
Yeah.
illegal here, but not in Europe, where Europe says, well, let's think about it's like the precautionary principle. Let's think about whether to deploy this before. Let's think whether
You
it's a good
would
idea to deploy it before we do.
think
Um,
we would do it at least for safety. Like I'm not
yeah,
saying we
well,
would do it for to understand how it
well,
impacts family values. Like that's a
Well,
different
that's what I was
issue.
gonna
But
say. Yeah, well, we don't do it for safety for sure.
right.
But for family values, I mean, I don't think it's an interesting idea and it's sort of communitarian. It's admirable. I don't think even Europe does this anywhere that I can think of. But what actually reminds me of is I don't know if you know that I went down a real rabbit hole with golf carts a couple of years ago, which I'm still interested in. I don't think we've talked about that on the podcast
No,
yet.
that somebody asked that question about golf carts when we were on the that panel in Toronto.
Oh yeah, look, I can go off on golf carts. Love me a golf cart, but I wrote a deep dive story. I actually was on the ground in Peachtree City, Georgia, which is this ex-urban town suburb, but I don't know, 40 miles outside of Atlanta. But it's basically connected all throughout it by golf cart paths, and there's like 3 golf carts for every 4 households. It's an incredible ratio and I remember interviewing the mayor about it, and she said something that was reflected in what I heard from a lot of residents who I talked to as well, which was that golf carts just make the whole community friendlier because you stop and say hello to somebody in a golf cart, and you would never do that if they were driving by in a car. And it really stayed with me and it resonated. And I don't know if the Amish have thought about whether they want to accept golf carts, but I frankly wonder if they would because you still are able to you're going about as fast as you would on an e-bike, 15
Yep.
miles an hour or so. And maybe it actually does allow for those sorts of community interactions that are healthy.
It makes perfect sense. You ever been to the villages in Florida?
Yeah, I once dragged my wife there against her will because I was so curious to see the golf carts there. She's still mad at me about this, by the way, years later. But why do you ask?
Oh, I've been there as well. My father-in-law lives down there, so it's been a while since I've been there. But it's a fascinating community. It's like new urbanism, but with golf carts instead of like walking, biking.
It is. I mean, so for those who know the villages, it's like, I don't know, 100 some thousand people and retirement community, 55 plus, I believe, north of Orlando. It is interesting. What I
Like
found is
far north. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's like
it
between
kind of is middle
Ocala
of
and
nowhere.
Orlando.
Yeah,
It's
you're
not.
right. You're actually right.
Yeah,
It's not an exurb of Orlando. That's fair. But what's interesting is like and part of why I wanted to look at Peachtree City is it's not a retirement community. There's
yeah.
kid like actually the high school parking lot is totally full of golf carts. And I interviewed a couple of high schoolers who were saying it's great because now it like, you can use your golf cart at 15 years old and go off on your own and hang out with your friends, which you can't do if you don't have your driver's license yet. It's really fun for independence, and it makes them better drivers. They were telling me. I don't know. I like we're a little further afield, I guess, from the Amish, but I am very intrigued. I think it's actually admirable and kind of healthy to sort of ask, is this device or type of mobility conveyance going to lead to a tighter knit community, or at least not erode community ties? I think we never have really those sorts of conversations out in the open, and it feels like it's not unhealthy, God knows, to do it, right?
It's worth talking about. I memean, whether we do the same thing we would have done in the first place, like it's still worth sometimes thinking through that. And
Uh, Yeah, I mean,
it's
what was his name? Donald Appleyard, right? Who
yeah,
wrote those famous stories. He passed away a young, tragically, but in the early '80s, he did a famous study looking at how car-oriented communities have fewer neighborly ties.
yes.
And I think that's a finding that still resonates 40 years ago because people kind of get it. Like if you spend your time getting into your car out on your driveway, driving wherever you're going, coming right back, you aren't going to know your neighbors as well as you would if you're walking and biking and just sort of seeing them outside of the windshield mentality, right?
Yeah, and actually, his son Bruce Appleyard updated that Livable Streets book, so Livable Streets 2.0, where he redid some of those studies, and like you're still finding the same thing. Like there's some amazing graphics where you see people's social connections depending on if they live on the high, medium, or low traffic street.
Yeah, it's really powerful research. And for those who are curious, maybe we can link to it in the show notes. I remember Sarah Goodyear, who's now with War on Cars, she wrote an article in City Lab like 13 years ago about Appleyard's research that went viral. So there are some accessible ways of learning the lessons without reading a difficult to find academic book from the early 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
And there's some great videos too. There's some YouTube videos that
Oh yeah,
graphically show this stuff. And
I haven't seen that.
actually,
That's
in
cool.
doing the research for my own book, I mean, that's when I learned what happened to Donald Appleyard. He went to a conference in Greece, like stepped off the curb when it was killed by a car.
Yeah, it's
And
really tragic.
I saw his son Bruce at TRB last year, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I never knew this. He's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah. He's like, he was like 17. His dad went away for a conference, and he never saw him again.
Yeah, it's really horrible.
And I
It's a
hugged
good
the
yeah.
man. I was like, we hugged each other after. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
a
Bruce is a
grown
good guy.
adult.
I
He's a
know
good
him
guy.
too. It was cool. Just a little side note on that. Bruce posted he's active on social media, and a couple years ago he posted pretty cool. It was like a I want to say it was his father was a grad student in a class taught by Lewis Mumford, who's
Oh
like a
wow.
hero of mine. The writer of City and History and one of the first people to really call out the dangers of cars in cities. And he actually so Bruce has his father's like paper that's reviewed by Mumford, where Mumford's like, B minus, it's okay, you could do better. It was awesome. It was so cool. He put it on social media. Like, this is one of the neatest things I've ever seen.
That's
Um,
awesome.
all right. Well, that was thank you for a nice sort of uplifting topic. We need more of those. We got to find something to brighten the day. But now let's get back to a problem, because that's my roundabout
That's
topic.
your area of
That's what I do. I make us all feel miserable. So you remember, I think in one of the very first episodes we did, not that we've done that many yet, but I talked about abundance, which is this sort of trendy idea about how
yeah.
we can provide more important stuff that we need for society, like healthcare and housing and mobility, by looking at sort of supply side constraints and thinking about costs. It's a topic I'm really interested in, and I'm actually doing a series of articles and investigations into what abundance might look like for transportation, which I'm going to write in Bloomberg. And the first one of them came out a week ago, weekish, looking at a topic I really knew nothing about, but it makes total sense now that I understand the findings. Looking at the cost of new transit buses in the U.S. And this was spurred by a really interesting research paper published jointly by Brookings and the American Enterprise Institute by Ed Glazer, well-known urban economist, Sam Silverberg, who led infrastructure implementation in the Biden White House and is now a fellow at Harvard, and a couple other folks too. And they looked at basically why American transit buses cost so freaking much, and also the prices are all over the map. One for basically identical buses, one transit agency might spend twice as much as another, and overseas transit agencies are spending literally a third as much as American agencies are on buses. Like an electric bus on average costs 1.1 million in the U.S. Singapore bought a bunch recently for 333,000. And of course, more expensive buses means taxpayer dollars are getting wasted, and that also increases the debt that transit agencies have to service, and that can actually drive up operating costs at a time when finances are in somewhat dire positions. So really, like, it looks like based on their research and some other findings too, there's some common reasons why the US bus market is kind of out of whack. One is that it's a duopoly. Pretty much we can only buy with the two major players in the US, which are Gillig and New Flyer. And the reason it's a duopoly to a large extent is that there's no foreign entrants by and large because of Buy America rules,
Yeah.
which have shut out BYD and Hyundai and some other companies that make much more affordable buses overseas. But the other point, and this is one that got a lot of interest when I was posting this on social media, is that transit agencies customize everything. By everything, I mean windows and floor colors and panel shades of gray. And what that does is it basically destroys any ability to have economies of scale that would lower costs in the manufacturing side. So the researchers identified some possible solutions, including sort of pushing agencies to move away from customization and to introduce some foreign competition in limited ways. But it's a really interesting problem that I don't think gets almost any attention. I was told after I wrote this story in City Lab, which we'll link to in the show notes, it was actually the first like mainstream media article ever about the cost of US transit buses, which is shocking to me. But it's a topic that just has not gotten attention outside of a really narrow group of researchers and professionals. So I have more thoughts on this, but I don't know if this is something that's been on your radar, Wes, because it only recently became on mine.
No, it hasn't. I mean, but it reminds me of, I think it was the Eno Foundation had that report a few years ago about how much it costs to build transit. So,
Yeah.
right, they did that per mile of subway and
Oh, wait. Is
at
that
great.
Eno or are you talking about NYU?
I thought it was Eno. Maybe I'm mistaken. I
No, I'm pretty
remember
sure
a
it's the Transit
report.
Cost Project.
Um,
Yeah, it's. I'm pretty sure it's the Transit Cost Project at NYU
yeah.
because with Alan Levy and Eric Goldwyn. But please keep going. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I think that the bottom line, from what I remember from that, is it costs about 40% more to build a mile of anything. If New York, if you focus on New York, it's like 200%,
Yeah,
250%
yeah,
more.
yeah.
But in general, in the U.S., just building a mile of any transit is way more than the rest of the world, including some of the countries in Europe that you would consider to be expensive. Like we're still lagging behind in that. So, and the numbers here seem relatively similar. Like when I was a grad student, like one of the first colloquiums we had we had a guy come up from, I think he came up from New York and New Haven or something, and he was the designer of the new Metro North trains. And I kind of expected him to talk about train design, all this stuff, but he literally talked about fabric the whole time, like the fabrics he was picking for the trains. And he's like, the most luxurious fabric is like cotton, not leather, and all this sort of stuff. But you're totally right about customization. And it's not just that. I did some digging, and it's like fire trucks too. Our fire trucks are
Yep.
like double the price of everywhere else, in part because we're customizing everything. And I think we all know if you customize anything even a little bit, it jacks up the price so much. Like, so why do you think we're doing that? I couldn't kind of wrap my head around it.
No, it's funny actually. When I interviewed Ed Glazer for that story, he said, the funny thing about this bus industry situation is that like nobody is benefiting from it. Like it's expensive to manufacture the buses. We're pushing out domestic suppliers. The agencies are spending more money, and riders are stuck being inside decrepit, breakdown prone buses. Now that I've actually like, I'm not sure that that Ed is totally right about that though. Now that I've gotten some feedback, in particular, I think transit agencies really like being able to choose things. They love to align with their branding and marketing. And a lot of them really think that they're driving a hard bargain by saying, well, we want the best of blah, blah, blah for our riders. So they insist on, this being slightly different, which is better in their mind than another system. So interestingly, like APTA, the Transit Association, has come out against prior efforts to sort of rein in customization of bus purchasing. I
Hmm.
think that's a reflection of what the agencies themselves want. So to me, this is really a place where the federal government has to get involved and create some guardrails to prevent, basically to prevent agencies from sort of hurting themselves practically. I hate to put it that way, but it seems real.
Do we have like different safety standards or something when it comes to, like, I can imagine Singapore not having sort of the same standards of a bus than we might have. Like, could that be part of it? Or like the other hypothesis I had is like maybe we're not buying in bulk like these other countries are. Like from what I've heard, like a lot of transit agencies are buying like 2 or 3 buses at a time, not like
Yeah. No,
a
that's right.
hundred.
That's right. The average number of buses, it's in the article that I wrote. It's because the researchers found it. I want to say it's like 10 buses. I can't remember exactly, but it's a tiny number.
And
And
you
I
get a
bet
much
you're
better
right.
deal if you buy
Totally.
50, right?
Yeah, and that's the same if you want to buy like, like loaves of bread. Like you'll get a better deal if you're buying more of them at Costco than if you're only getting one at your grocery store.
Yeah, so why can't like 10 agencies get together and buy like 1,000 buses in one fell swoop? I
There have
mean,
been a lot of efforts to do that, and I think that's what the researchers are really calling for. But I think the transit agencies themselves feel like, well, look, the feds pay 80% of the cost of transit procurements. So they're like, if we're pushing the cost increase really onto others by and large, maybe it's worth it because we want to have like our special widgets, our special colors, whatever else it is. That's what I've heard repeatedly from folks that I talked to both before the article came out and the feedback I got afterwards.
it's interesting too that you can buy an SUV for cheaper here than other countries. Like I ran the numbers for a Jeep Grand Cherokee. Like the base model is like 41,000, 42,000 here. Same car in Australia is 60,000, Germany 62, France is 65.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about all those countries, but I know a number of them have like weight based fees if you buy them, which can increase the cost. Of course, we don't do that in the US, although we should. But yeah, no, I find this whole thing about transit bus purchasing interesting because it basically drags down the entire transit sector financially. And it's a topic that I think really gets missed by people who really want to support transit and talk about the importance of fast, frequent, reliable service and argue in behalf of lots of reasons why we should fund transit fully. And I totally support those efforts, and I'm with everybody who wants to see more transit investments. But it is worth taking a moment, and this is kind of like abundance pilled thinking, to say, are we actually spending more than we should on certain important aspects of it, and
Yeah.
could we actually get more for the dollar? We should go to mailbag,
All right.
because let me just say, thank you to everyone who's been submitting questions. We now have a backlog of questions going back a ways. We do want to get to everyone. And for those who are joining the live stream, please do not just ask questions on the live stream, email it to us at lookbothwayspod@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to get to you. So let me ask you a couple questions from our mailbag. And actually, you mentioned fire trucks. So I'll go to Frank in Montreal, who said he'd like to hear our thoughts about North American fire truck sizes and how they may limit cities from narrowing streets. Your thoughts?
Oh, they do. We did a transit project in Nantucket I talked about before in the podcast, but they have very narrow streets and they have to buy special order fire trucks, which I'm sure are more expensive, but they're smaller. I remember last year I was at a conference and I met with the former mayor of Carmel, Indiana, who's known for the roundabout
Yeah.
proliferation that's happening there. And he was trying to buy smaller fire trucks, and he says I couldn't do it. Like, it was impossible, not just because the procurement of the fire truck itself, but there's a difference in, like, the connections, the water connections between them and kind of the basic US water connection. So he's like, it was this whole can of worms that I never thought was possible. Like, we literally could not buy small fire trucks if we wanted to.
Yeah, this is actually a big obstacle for a lot of road diet or lane narrowing efforts across the US because as soon as the fire department says, "Well, we can't reach fires or emergencies quick enough," who wants to possibly be responsible for overruling the fire department, right?
Oh, I do. I want to be responsible for that. I
Well,
mean, like, I ran the numbers. Like, they respond to 3 times more car crashes than fires.
yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean,
if you go to any major city that's got streets built before these rules existed for how wide they need to be for the sake of the fire marshal, if there's a fire in one of those streets, guess what? The fire truck's still going to come to those houses. They figure out a way to get there. So a lot of those clear widths that they have in the International Fire Code are bigger than they need to be. Like, and if we had some kind of battle of the fire truck drivers, I think they could manage to get their way through much smaller spaces
uh
than we give them
well,
credit for.
actually, on that note, I have a quick story to share. Let's be solutions oriented. There's a state DOT director who felt like he cracked the code for getting the fire departments to be on board with lane narrowings. Have I told you this story before?
No.
What he would do is like if he had a plan to narrow the street and the fireman was like, "Oh no, we can't get through." He'd say, "Total, we don't want to stand in the way of safety whatsoever. So if this street is a problem, if you think it's a problem, send us your worst fire truck driver, and we'll go there. And if or she can't get through, then we'll absolutely change the street." And so what happens? They go there with the fire department with the fire engine, and the driver, the machismo kicks in. Of course, the person gets right through without a problem.
Yep.
And this DOT director be like, "Oh, okay, I guess it was all right after all." I think this is actually brilliant.
Oh,
So
same
if your
thing happened
listeners use
here.
that,
Yeah. No, when we're putting in those traffic circles in neighborhoods, people were complaining about the same thing. Like, fire trucks can't get through. Tool Design literally bought out a truck driver to test it. And again, like, competitiveness kicked in. The guy did it easy. They filmed it.
yeah.
Um, and they were able to put it in. But later, other fire truck drivers were complaining. They're like, no, look, here's a video of you guys doing it. And it worked perfectly.
Well, let's maybe we can quickly do one more question 'cause it sort of
Yeah, yeah.
relates. This one's from Morgan in San Francisco,
Okay.
who asked that he had actually Morgan had sorry, I don't know if it's a he or a she, but Morgan had a number of questions. I'm going to zero in on one focused on I don't know if you know Valencia Street in San Francisco, which has been sort of like a controversial place where a bike lane was placed. But basically said that that Morgan had begged the city for proper bollards for the bike lane, not made of plastic. But the city said it had to be plastic so emergency vehicles could drive over them as needed. Do you have any thoughts about the actual safety of plastic bollards or plastic flexi posts, I guess, as opposed to bollards?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, it's better than paint, but it doesn't really protect bicyclists from cars. So I've been talking about Barbara Freed. She was a woman that was killed in a bike crash in Philadelphia. It happened like 2 days before I got there for a conference,
Yeah.
and they had the plastic ballers. A driver ran right over it and killed her. And like, the video I show right after is like them, a testing company testing them, because those plastic ballers are literally designed to pop back up if you run over them at 70 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So it's not real protection, and I don't know the specific design of Valencia Street as to why the fire trucks couldn't still save the day if those were real ballers, but there has to be a better way.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems everything I've seen suggests bollards are better than paint alone, as you've noted. But sorry, the flexi posts are better than
Yeah,
paint
because you
alone,
get the
but the
the
bollards are much
visual.
better than the flexi posts.
Yeah, you get the vertical visual, and it kind of narrows the street. So there's different advantages to it. At the same time, it's still not real protection.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let's put a pause there. Again, we love your questions. You can always send them to us at lookbothwayspod@gmail.com. We accept all kinds of flattery, criticism, sort of random thoughts. We get everything there, and we read all the messages. So please keep them coming.
And on the
Um,
YouTube Live, who doesn't love a good baller discussion? There you go. That's a
nice,
good
nice.
point.
I don't think it's gonna be the last, but I don't think it's gonna be the last one. By the way, if you're not following World Ballard Association
Yeah,
on Blue Sky or Twitter, for God's sake, get on that. It is one of the best social media accounts in existence. You know what I'm talking about, right, Wes?
very much so.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, rail drinks. This is where it's happy hour time, where Wes and I are. So we like to conclude our live streams with a drink. Do you have something? I hope.
I do. I have another bourbon. This is Jefferson's Ocean. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's the one where they distill it in cask on a boat, and the boat goes around the world, and you can get like a map to see where your bourbon had been as it
Sounds
ages.
gimmicky.
Well, I mean, I have it in part because I went to UVA, so Jefferson's sort of a big part of a lot of what I. And I also last week I happened to win the
Isn't it?
Thomas.
Sorry, isn't it Mr. Jefferson?
If you're at UVA, it is Mr. Jefferson. But last week I also won the Thomas Jefferson Award, so I had to give a little speech kind of about Jefferson. So he was on my mind, and I happened to have this bourbon in the back of my cabinet, so I pulled it out for today. And speaking of that ceremony, a former
Mhm.
student of mine brought me the first edition of John Forster's like vehicular cycling book.
Wow. Wait, he
Yeah,
gave it to you or
he
just
gave
showed
it
it?
to me. No, he gave me this
Wow.
book. So,
Did he also
um,
give you a set of darts?
no, I want to go through this with a fine tooth comb. Like I do not want to dart it
Dude,
up quite yet.
literally, he's dead, Wes. You don't have to like kick him that
No,
much
but I
harder
mean,
anymore.
this book, I mean, to be honest, it literally killed hundreds and thousands of people over the years. Like
Yes. No, it's true. It was
the
a very, very dangerous book. This was, for those who are just joining, this was our previous episode. What was that? Episode 6? Is that right?
yes, yeah,
Episode 6. Wes went on a bit of a tirade about how John Forrester is not his favorite bike expert, shall we say. But I'm glad. So I'm glad he's telling me to drink while you're getting angry, observing or reading, getting through that book.
yeah.
Meanwhile, I have I don't think I've had this yet. Mezcal. Have I had
Okay,
mezcal? I don't think I've had mezcal. This is
I
illegal
don't think so.
mezcal. I got it in Guatemala a while ago, and Guatemala's not that far from Oaxaca, where mezcal comes from. I don't like tequila, but I like mezcal, and I felt like I was in the mood for it, so that's why I'm drinking it.
All right,
Cheers.
cheers.
Oh, ooh, that I should have probably brought some water along with the mezcal, but you live, you learn. So this brings us to a close of episode 7. I believe it's episode 7. Is it episode 7?
It is
Yes.
episode 7. If you're watching the live stream, David's face just got a little bit redder after that mezcal.
Yeah. Thank you, Wes, for pointing that out to everyone. Very important. If you want to contact me and make fun of me for not being able to handle my mezcal, you can reach me at davidzipper.com. I have a newsletter called Paid with Good Intentions. It's free. You can sign up for there as well. Wes, I don't think I'm going to ask anymore because you don't like anyone contacting you, and it doesn't seem like it's going to change. But I will say, if you enjoyed joining us on the live stream or listening afterwards, please leave a review. Please tell a friend. We're still in the early days of this, and it's been awesome to see the audience grow. And we really thank everybody who has helped sort of attract people to the podcast because they care about transportation. That's why we're doing this. We love getting to know you guys and hearing what you think of what we're talking about. So we will be distributing this as an audio podcast very shortly, but the next episode is not going to be live because both Wes and I are traveling. Wes, where are you going?
I am heading to Perth, Australia next week
Awesome.
for a road safety conference. I'm giving a talk down there. And actually the week after I'm going to Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas to give a talk there as well. So the next 2 weeks I'm moving about a lot.
And I, on my part, I am going to Portland, Oregon in a couple days to give a keynote at the
Nice.
PAC-Trans conference. And then I'm actually going to be in Europe, right? I think when you get back from Australia, I'm giving a couple keynotes at the Mobi Summit in Lisbon and at Smart City Expo in Barcelona. So if folks are going to be there, feel free to get in contact, let me know. But at least the next, if not the next 2 episodes will be recorded and distributed, not live. So thanks for your patience with that. Wow, I'm looking at I really am redder than I was 15 minutes ago. That mezcal has an effect, doesn't it? But maybe on that note, we should call it here. But say,
Yes.
good to see you, Wes. Thanks everybody for joining us live, and we'll see you soon.